This time I'd like to welcome up to the podium Mr. David Farley, who will present the Don Harnum.
Who here has actually seen Don Harnum play football and basketball? Would you raise your hand if you actually saw him play? Not too many, Don. That's what happens when you get old. I personally saw Don play a lot of games. He was one of my heroes. I was a lowland sophomore in high school when Don was a senior. I was sitting at the end of the bench on the basketball team, the JV team. So I got an opportunity after each of the JV games to watch Don play. It was with all of his teammates, by the way. There were some incredible teammates that he had as well. One of the things that I think about when I think about Don Harnum, and I hadn't seen him in a long time, although I'm probably one of the few people on earth who knows more about Don in terms of his athletic abilities and performances over the years than probably anybody outside his family. So I did a lot of the research, and it took a while to get to where we ended up. One of the stories I tell, actually, my wife Pat is here tonight, and we drive through South Brewer a lot from time to time. And almost every time, and she's getting tired of me saying this, but we'll be driving through South Brewer, and I'll say, Don Harnum lived right there. Oh, by the way, Bobby Bauer lived right there. And Ed Capane lived on Warrington. That's what my life is like. You know, I kind of focus on where people lived 60 years ago. None of them live there now, by the way. In terms of, I'd like to say a few things about Don. I won't talk too much about statistics and that sort of thing, but just talk about Don and what he did at Brewer High School. His career is absolutely amazing. 60 years of being an athlete, a coach, an athletic director, administrator. He retired at the age of 72 from all of this stuff, and then he became a golfer at probably the most famous golf course in America, Pinehurst, in Pinehurst, North Carolina. Is that there, Don? Is the golf course? And I know he plays golf just about every day. He actually played golf during the recent hurricane, and they had 10 inches of rain, and he was out playing the next day. That's the kind of person he is. In terms of his athletic ability and his athletic performance, he was a three-sport star at Brewer. And he was really good. In both basketball and football, he was the captain of the basketball team his senior year. He was a two-way starter, offensive and defensive end in the football team. And probably, although Ralph Payne would probably disagree, one of the best football teams ever in the history of Brewer High School. I mean, they had 23 straight victories over 3 or 4 years. Don's junior and senior year, they were 15-0-1 and 2. And a lot of the people we'll talk about just in a second were both key players on the basketball team and key players on the football team. Just looking at the roster of the basketball team, for example. In basketball, in 1958, they were 15-5, went to the Eastern Maine tournament final, lost to Caribou by 10. Pete Kelly was a great player, and who beat him, basically. Larry Mahaney, of course, was the coach. But really started a string of 3 incredible years, 3 or 4 years for Larry Mahaney for the Brewer High School basketball. But on that team with Don in his senior year, now some of you folks know who these people are, some of you do not, but you probably should know who they are. Because Don was the captain, he played forward. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of statistics except for scoring. Don scored 14 points a year his sophomore year, 17 his junior year, and 17 his senior year. That's pretty impressive. But he also has some very good players with him. Todd Robertson, 6'6" center, actually still holds the Brewer High School, I think, a single-game scoring record. He scored 56 points, so maybe the following year. Bump Hadley, probably the greatest linebacker in the history of Brewer High School, an incredible football player. And Ed Kiley was the point guard. He was also the starting quarterback on the great football team. Norris Nickerson was a great football player, but he also played basketball. Joe McCluskey, Roy Stewart, two other players on that team. And we can't forget Danny Coombs, who was a sophomore, was the sixth man until near the end of the season, and then he was a starter. So when you look at those names in Brewer High School history, it's incredible. All of these guys, maybe with the exception of Danny Coombs, were absolute stars also on the football team of that the state championship in 1957, where they were undefeated. Don was a key player. He was a star, but he had some help as well, and I'm sure Don would tell you that. Also, one of the things when I was looking through some of my research, one of the things I noticed is in the 1950s, athletics at Brewer High School was absolutely incredible. In terms of the athletes, some of whom are in the Hall of Fame, Tom Kelly and Bobby Bauer. There were a bunch of other people too who should be at some point recognized. And hopefully, I'm even talking about some of these folks on the basketball and football team in 1958. There's several of those who could be candidates for the Brewer High School Hall of Fame. Bobby Bauer, Dave talked about, who died a little while ago. Both he and Ralph Payne are probably the two greatest running backs in the history of Brewer High School. And they have some competition this year with a couple of fellows on the team, but anybody who saw those guys play know what I'm talking about. Bobby Bauer, just go off on the side a little bit. Bobby Bauer was also an American hero. He was 1,400 combat missions. He was a helicopter gunship pilot. All kinds of medals, and it really affected him too. The other thing that affected Bobby Bauer was being inducted into this Hall of Fame. I know personally that he was absolutely thrilled. It meant an incredible amount to him. And fortunately, the Hall of Fame committee got him in, and obviously, when he could enjoy it. In terms of Don Harnum, let's get back to Don for a second, since that's what I'm here for. Just looking at what I do every year is look at the tripe. Sometimes there's good stuff in here, sometimes not so good. Don was president of his junior class, vice president of his senior class. He was getting captain of the basketball team. He was a real student leader. Although I did notice on one of the photographs in the Trident, there's a picture of him, I guess, fielding a ball in the baseball team. They call him Slab Harnum. I have no idea what Slab, how you got that. Is that still your name? Slab?
Not really.
Okay. He also was in the gun club and the glee club. So perhaps Don, do we do the fight song at the end of the program? No? Because Don volunteered to lead it. So his experience in these kinds of things. And one thing I'll read on the Trident, until recent years perhaps, they always did kind of a saying and a statement about each person who graduated. And this is what they said about Don Harnum. Donnie is our basketball captain, and proud of him are we. In sports at Maine and in future life, a great success we know he'll be. And that is absolutely Don's whole life. He's been an incredible success. He's been an incredible representative of Brewer High School and the city of Brewer. He's a class act. He was a class act in high school, and he was in college, and throughout his entire career. So, Donnie, thank you, and thanks for coming, and congratulations.
thrilled to be here. I'm so delighted to see so many friends from years ago, and my cousin Joan is here, my sweet sister Sally is here. It's made it just wonderful. I also want to thank the selection committee for their wisdom. When I played all these sports, we didn't keep statistics. I had no idea how many tackles I had, how many assists I had, how many passes I got, and none of that stuff was. Now, if you wink at a cheerleader, it's recorded. Back at that time, so it was not really easy to get me in because there are not records like there were in the current athletes. I grew up in South Brewer, and I tell people I've lived in many parts of the country how thrilled I was and proud I am to be from a little town in Brewer. And a lot of them don't know where it is, but when I was growing up in South Brewer, the mill was going great. My mom and dad were running a restaurant. We all, as kids, worked in there. We had Dwelly's Drugstore, Clem Barrow's Variety Store, Epstein's Jewelry and Clothing Store, Getchell's Barber Shop, the school next door. And I'll tell you one brief story that happened to me that doesn't happen today. Me and my buddy Eddie Kyler, there was a train that ran between the restaurant and the school. And as it ran through, every once in a while we'd hop the train, ride it for 50 yards, jump off and go to school. Well, our principal, Dagny Erickson, who some of you may remember from years ago, saw us do this and called us up to her room up on the 3rd floor that overlooked the railroad tracks. She said, "I saw you guys do this." I said, "Yes, we did. Put your hands up." She took this great big wooden ruler and whacked us on the hands 10 times each of us. "If you do it again, you'll get 10 more. How would that go today? You were great with me. I never rode the train. I had such a great time in my years at Brewer High School, and playing sports were just a thrill for me. I got into coaching and spent my entire career in college coaching, and it was really a lot because of the 2 great coaches that I had. Larry Mahaney here at Brewer High School, who just fired me up, and Harold Westerman, who was my coach at the University of Maine in football, a wonderful guy, and I just had a marvelous career doing all of it. I like to tell people I've really never had a real job. I just knew what I was doing, loving it every day. But I also want to apologize if I violated the dress code a bit tonight, because I know it was business formal, but I did want to reveal to you that this is the only orange and black that I had in my wardrobe, and I did want to let you all know how much I love